Hello there. Julian Richings here. You're listening to Don't Go Out There.
Robert Englund here. Check out Don't Go Out There, horror movie podcast.
Hey guys, this is Danielle Harris, and you are listening to the Don't Go Out There horror movie review podcast.
In a world where zombies, ghosts, serial killers, and vampires all exist, it's Nico, Brian, Mike, and Dustin, and they are all that stand between you and the films that could end the world. Welcome to the Don't Go Out There horror movie podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Don't Go Out There horror movie review podcast. Just want to thank all our fans and listeners. I really appreciate all the support. You guys are awesome. Before we jump into tonight's film review, I just want to give a quick shout out to our website, don'tgoouthere.com. Everything about our podcast is on our website. We've got all our episodes and interviews from the very first one to our new weekly releases. Definitely check that out if you want to listen there. We've done some incredible interviews. Several are coming out this month, so if you want to go to our website and go to our interviews tab, it's a lot easier to find them there if you want to do that. We have our store. We have some new T-shirts. We have Shan's Etsy page for tumblers. If you want to get any merch, rep your favorite horror podcast, we'd really appreciate that. And we're also on all social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Like us, subscribe us, follow us, all that good stuff. We love interacting with our fans. We love reading your comments on the show. We love, just chit-chatting with you about horror. And it means a lot to us that this show, y'all love it so much. We really appreciate that. Last thing we'll shout on our website is our Patreon called Blood Donors. We have the traditional monthly reoccurring kind. If, none of this money goes in our pockets, it just goes directly back into the podcast, site hosting, making YouTube videos, stuff like that. That's all that money goes to. Or if you're a big fan of a movie, you want to make a one-time donation, we have that tier available as well if you want us to review a movie. But let's kick off spooky season tonight, October, with Brother Brian's pick. You want to announce your pick, brother, and why you picked it?
Yeah, man, I went with 1998's Urban Legend, Jamie Blank's directed film. Just peek behind the curtain. I was actually going to pick this about this same time last year for much of the same reasons I did this time. I mean, the Halloween-esque atmosphere, this amazing cast, full of friends of the show, by the way. So you're going to hear that term a lot tonight. But, when I watched it again last year for the first time in over a decade, it just didn't hold up to what I had in my head, which isn't his fault. I mean, it's not the movie's fault. It's the same movie, obviously. But, I guess I'd changed a little bit. And to be honest, I was a little bit disappointed, which is why I changed my pick last year to, I think I went with Halloween 4. But, this time I just felt like it was overdue. And again, I love the atmosphere and the cast. And so I decided it was time to go with it. I said back on our Valentine review that of the two, Valentine I felt like was more enjoyable Jamie Blank's movie. And, Jamie, come on the show, by the way, huge fan of yours. But yeah, I still stand by that statement. I feel like of the two, Valentine is better to me. But it doesn't mean I dislike this by any means. I mean, this rewatch, I liked it better than a year ago. So again, I don't hate it or anything. It just doesn't have that it factor that it did 20 years ago for me. Still love the premise, love the cast, and it's still a good 90s slasher though, in my opinion. I just don't think I'll be the highest score on this show, just despite how nostalgic I usually am for these 90s slashers.
And now it's my turn, and I'll just blow everyone's mind because everyone thinks I hate the 90s and I hate whodunits. But this is my second favorite whodunit movie behind Scream, and this is probably, my second favorite 90s whodunit movie just in general. I thoroughly enjoy this movie. I always have. I love the opening scene. And like Brian said, just so many horror legends throughout. You got Brad Dourif, Robert Englund, Danielle Harris, friend of the show, Tara Reid, Julian Richings. You check out his interview. So many great cast members in this movie. I love it. Jared Leto, he's coming on the show in a couple months. Just kidding. I don't know. We'll work on that one. But anywho, I think the kills in this movie is great. Such a fun premise. The only real issue I have with this movie, honestly, is just the ending. Not a big fan of the ending, but the concept, the execution, I thoroughly enjoy this movie. Brian says I always hate his picks, but tonight I'm going to love his pick way more than he did. He came in my list of movies and stole my pick from me, but I'm glad he did because I really like this movie. Mike, you want to go ahead and go next?
Probably the only one we have the same.
Yeah, man. I had not seen this movie in quite a while. It's been many years. I've only seen this one. I haven't seen any of the sequels.
So I was very excited to dive back into it. This is probably my own third time ever watching it. So again, I enjoy it for what it is. I think it's a little schlocky, but so are most 90s slashers. Like, I think this kind of fits right in the shadow of the Scream movies. Now, again, it's not meta like them, but the same kind of vibe, the same over-the-top teens, very smart teen, just that it has that same vibe that Scream has. But it's a completely different concept, a concept which I think is really enjoyable. The urban legend killer or whatever, that kind of doesn't pay off. We'll talk about that later. But I think, for the most part, it gets a lot of stuff right. It's very of its time. It's a nice time capsule with a really good cast. I mean, when Jared Leto is one of your normal characters in your movie, man, that's crazy. I mean, this cast is loaded, man. You got him, Rebecca Gayheart, Robert Englund, Loretta Devine, shout out to Boston Legal, Tara Reid, Josh Jackson, there is a funny meta moment with Josh Jackson. Danielle Harris is in this movie. I mean, it's a really loaded cast. I think it's a whole lot of fun, and I don't necessarily love the payoff, but I don't really know if the payoff is like the most important part of the movie to me. So whatever. But I think it's a good time, and great pick to start off spooky season though, because it definitely has that spooky vibe that just it gives off good spooky season vibes.
Yeah, I had seen this movie once prior, and that was years and years ago. Revisited it obviously a couple times for this, and I, like Brian, liked it better in my memory. I liked it better back then. Not to say I hated it. I didn't. I think it's an okay movie. It just, to me, it I don't know how to say it. It really felt typical of the 90s. And then there was too many damn jump scares. Oh my God, too many. And then it was just pretty typical. Now there were some good aspects to it. We'll get into it in the scene by scene, but I really love the cast. Shout out to Loretta Devine, especially. I don't know if y'all have ever seen the movie Death at a Funeral, the remake they made with Chris Rock and all them, but she's in it. And I know she's been in a lot of other stuff too, but every time I see her now, I just think of that movie. But anyway, getting sidetracked there. We got Charlie Conway. He went full Slim Shady after he was done playing hockey. Josh Jackson, that is. So it was a pretty fun movie. Good runtime for sure, but I'm glad you picked it because I hadn't seen it in years, and I'm glad I got that refresher.
Alrighty, guys. Any more opening thoughts before you just jump right into it? All right, let's do it. The film starts with title card as we see rain falling and opening credits. We see an SUV driving along some country roads. Michelle is listening to college talk radio. She reaches to her backseat and almost runs into someone. She changes the radio and the banger, Total Eclipse of the Heart plays, and she sings along terribly. It begins to rain as she passes a gas station. Her gas light turns on and she pulls into a small gas station. She honks her horn repeatedly as a gas station attendant jump scares her and she asks him to fill it up as she hands him her credit card. She calls him a freak show and he begins to gas the vehicle up. He looks in the back seat and walks inside the gas station. He returns saying the credit card company is on the phone and they need to talk to her. She's annoyed but exits the car with her mace or pepper spray, whatever it is, and runs inside. She picks up the phone but no one is there. He locks the door and he grabs her arm and she sprays him in the eyes. She throws the phone through the window and she climbs out running back to her car. She drives away and he yells, "Stop, there's someone in the back seat." She cries and Total Eclipse of the Heart continues to play as we see a hooded figure with an axe sits up and she sees it in her rearview mirror as the axe slashes at her, breaking the window. We're at Pendleton University now and we meet Sasha, who takes another call from Felicia about swallowing, and she calls her an airhead. We now meet the rest of our cast. Brenda has Parker continue his story on Stanley Hall. Paul corrects him with the correct subject he taught. The guy goes berserk, grabs a knife, and goes into Stanley Hall and killed everyone who answered their door before finally stabbing himself through the heart. They have a frat party to commemorate a massacre. Parker and Paul begin a debate on who covered up the story. Brenda is attracted to Paul big time. Brenda and Natalie walk, and Brenda asks what happens if I say Bloody Mary 5 times. They walk up to the abandoned building and say it 5 times, but nothing happens until they hear someone wailing from inside. They back away and into Damon. They make fun of his facial hair, and he says, "See you tomorrow in class." Natalie walks into the creepy janitor as she enters her building, and she gets yelled at by Tosh, her roommate, when she turns the light on as she is having sex. Pretty awkward for Natalie, who has to be in the same room as it happens. Next day, we're in class as Professor Wexler speaks on urban legends. He laughs at Brenda, who says it happened in her hometown. Brenda laughs and Professor calls her out. He asks her to come volunteer for his experiment. He asks her to eat Pop Rocks. He now hands her a Pepsi, and she backs away. She says your stomach and intestines will burst. She brings up Mikey, and Professor shows pictures of a fully grown Mikey and asks if she'd drink some now. Damon says he'll do it. He walks up and eats the Pop Rocks and drinks the soda. Voila, still alive, is just an urban legend, Professor says, as Damon falls down the stairs and begins to convulse. But then he laughs. It was all a joke. Brilliant. He's brilliant, Parker says. All right, Brian, that's the opening set of scenes I got. What'd you think?
Yeah, so I think the opening's fine. It does give me a little snicker to see her put a cassette tape in and see how abnormally fast her gas tank decides to lose gas. You may want to get that checked out, by the way, chick. But it was awesome to hear friend of the show, Tara Reid, which at this point she hadn't even done American Pie yet, which kind of blew my mind a little bit when I saw that.
Yes.
And see the always amazing Brad Dourif, who barely even has a role in this, but does arguably the best acting of the entire movie. His stuttering is not only so damn good, but it adds so much tension here, not being able to just spit it out, especially countering, what I'm going to say wasn't the best performance in the world from Natasha Wagner. Again, disclaimer, I'm a loser who talks about movies, so who am I to judge about a performance? But here we are. It just kind of came across as cheesy is all. Fun little trivia. She's the daughter of Natalie Wood for those 60s film buffs. But I like the kill, although it didn't show it. And we know how I am about decapitations if you're not super strong. But the chunk of the skin on the axe, I thought was a cool shot from Blanks. I thought that was good. The whole sitting around scene, definitely another Scream ripoff. Was interesting to see Michael Rosenbaum with Jared Leto in this. I mean, who I'd forgotten was even in this the last time I watched it. Both are now so entwined with the DC Comics universe. Nerd alarm, Dustin. As Lex Luthor and the freaking Joker, but don't ask Leto about this movie though. Apparently, has disowned this film and refuses to talk about it in interviews.
Better than his Suicide Squad movie that I accidentally saw parts of.
I mean, I agree with that.
Suicide Squad's better than this, and Brian knows how I feel about Suicide Squad. Go ahead.
Oh my god.
Well, here we go. Leto, if you come on this show, we like to chew gum and ask urban legend questions, and we're all out of fucking bubble gum. Well, no, I take that back. Dustin is no way ever out of bubble gum. But anyway, Parker, I think, sucks and isn't really even very good Randy from Scream knockoff, in my opinion. And look, Alicia Witt as Natalie Simon, maybe a hot take. Her character is very unlikable to me. And I think that she was miscast. Funny enough, the list of people that actually turned down this role were not limited to Melissa Joan Hart, Jennifer Love Hewitt, and Reese Witherspoon. All of them turned down the role. And Alicia's sweet. She's been in a bunch of other stuff, but it's just, I don't know. I would have liked to have seen someone else in that role. That's all. She just didn't resonate with me. Also, a frat party to commemorate a massacre. That sounds familiar. Scream 4. Rebecca Gayheart on the flip, though, I think is perfect casting, and I think she does phenomenal.
Bingo.
And Josh Jackson as well. Another fun fact, you were talking about her hair, or his hair, him being Eminem, Dustin mentioned earlier. Josh Jackson and Tara Reid actually both shot scenes for Cruel Intentions, great movie by the way, shortly before production started on this. So Jackson kept his hair blonde for the Urban Legends shoot, just in case he was needed to return to Cruel Intentions for any reshoots. So and also shout out friend of the show, Robert freaking Englund, and the janitor, friend of the show, Julian Richings, who you can hear their interviews on where, Brian? Oh, that's me. Don'tgooutthere.com. And friend of the show, Danielle Harris as well, who actually auditioned for the role of Natalie. Better choice probably. And funny enough, was roommates with Tara Reid right before shooting this movie. So the last thing I'll say is, I do think it's good writing and makes it more interesting and grounded that they had this whole movie kind of based around real life urban legends, but yet the biggest one in the movie was the one about the school's own urban legend, which was obviously made up. Again, I like the premise here. Urban legends, are one of those things that you grew up on with sleepovers or whatever. At least I did. Nowadays, that's kind of a dead thing with kids, having their phones available to just look it up. Time before the internet wasn't always a bad thing, I think. Kind of sad. You know how long I went thinking Mark Paul Gosselaar had died after Saved by the Bell, or the rumor with Marilyn Manson having removed his rib? It was the dark ages back then. Dustin remembers. Go ahead, Mike.
I also remember, asshole. Damn it. God almighty. Okay, so yeah, I think this opening is fine. Like, it does a good job of kind of setting up a story. This cold open here is a really good setup for what happens at the end of the movie. So I think that works really well. It's kind of a contrast, the beginning and the final act of the film. First of all, we get Brad, not just Brad Dourif. We get Brad motherfucking Dourif yet again. He has a small bit part here, but I think he's really, really good. And I think the kill is just fine. And, I love the total eclipse of the heart stuff. Like, I think that's funny for some reason. Like, whatever, it worked for me because the singing was so fucking terrible. And I don't know. There was just a little bit of good humor there, or at least I thought. Brian mentioned the sitting around scene being like Scream. Man, every one of these 90s slasher has one of these sitting around scenes. Everyone's kind of talking to their friends. So it's straight up out of Scream. But it was almost just like a trope of the time period that I think, it's fine. We also get Robert Englund as a professor. And now Robert Englund plays this role so well because he's such a red herring. Our brains as horror fans are used to him being an evil, burned up piece of shit. And so to see him in a different character, my mind immediately goes to, oh, well, it's probably him. I mean, they're making it the professor. He's the one teaching him about these urban legend things anyway. And so that makes sense to me. So I love the casting there. I think it's really, really good. I think for the most part, the casting is good. Like, I don't disagree with you as far as Alicia Witt as Natalie. Like, she's not to me, she's not the strength of the acting cast, but I think she's serviceable. She's fine.
I just hated that she was the lead, and she just didn't resonate with me. So, I mean, of all the people to not resonate with me, it was the worst one.
No, I think that's totally fair. I think Rebecca Gayheart is great here. I actually think Michael Rosenbaum is great here. Just my opinion. I mean, he's not like great as Parker, but he plays a good asshole later in the movie. So I like that about it as well. And it was fun to see. It's always fun to see Josh Jackson around this time period, just because grew up on this guy being the Free Willy kid. And to just, every time you see him in one of these like 90s rom-com or 90s slashers, I think it's great. And there's another scene that comes up with him in the next set that I think is really funny. It got me, and it was meta. And then you get Danielle Harris, who I actually do think is miscast. I would have loved to have seen Danielle Harris in a bigger role here, one that gives her more screen time, because I think she could have enhanced the film a pretty decent amount. I actually think this final scene here in the classroom, auditorium, whatever, it's a college, so it could be either one. With the Pop Rocks is pretty funny. Like, I think it works really well, especially because you just know that even though they try to make it suspenseful and tension-filled, you just know it's a prank. And I think that the character Damon does a good job. Like, they just kind of selling it. He sells it like a wrestling heel, and I think it works really well. So I think this is a good set of scenes. I'm not totally sold on every single character that we're introduced to here, but overall, I think it's a pretty fun set.
All right, so first thing I wrote down was, man, this girl can't sing for shit. Just awful. I texted you guys that during this when I was watching it as well. Just awful. But anyway, it's a really good score, and it's open here. It really sets the tone. It's creepy, but also kind of light and fun when she's in the the gas station scene there. They do a great job of swerving her suspicion. She's afraid of the guy just because he has a stutter and he's a little weird, but he's just trying to warn her. So good job there, trying to throw us off their scent. And it really lets you know what you're in for the rest of this movie, because you're just like, oh, is he the bad guy? Is he the bad guy? So, but one of the things that stood out though is, how the hell did someone get in the back seat if the door, when she came out, she was unlocking the doors? So how the hell did someone get in the damn back seat to begin with? But whatever, I'll forgive it. But this movie, especially the opening, is just such a 90s vibe. You get when you get on campus, it's just a very typical college scene. You see it in every movie, every TV show from the 90s. This is how every college looked. So that was pretty fun. You get the first of our stupid jump scares. This one from Charlie Conway. And then less than 2 minutes later, you get another jump scare from the janitor. It's just, jump scares are fine when they add something or when they're, I don't know, when they're necessary. These just felt, they were the annoying kind. We get Robert Englund, like you guys said, the legend himself. Great cameo here. I liked him as a professor, especially because, like you said, Mike, your immediate suspicion is, oh, it's probably him. We're used to him being a villain. When they're doing the pop rock scene, you get a very clear shot of a Pepsi can. And then when she's at the gas station earlier, she hands her card out the window, and it's very clearly got the MasterCard logo on it. Great brand placement there. Yes, that is marketing at its finest.
It's like
there.
There's no number on that card either. It's just a gigantic ass MasterCard logo.
It's just a blue card with a red circle and a yellow circle intertwining. Great. As far as the prank itself, though, what the hell did he have in his mouth to spit up? That looked disgusting.
It did.
Looks like he was spitting up toothpaste. Yeah, bird shit. But also, that's kind of unbelievable. Not the fact that he pulled that prank off, but the fact that the professor was so lax about it, because he was kind of a dick to the girls when they're joking around. It's like, why don't you come on up here? I'll make an example of you. And then this guy fakes his death, and students sending someone to call 911. And he's like, good one. Okay. But overall, it's a pretty good set of scenes, though. It definitely grabs your attention and holds you because it's fun at this point.
Two quick things that I skipped over on accident. One, this character that Tara Reid is playing of Sasha is the opposite of her character in American Pie. Like, it's so funny to see them come out like right around the same time, and just the contrast, because her character Sasha here is obsessed with sex, to be quite frank. And in American Pie, she's just like waiting and doesn't want to, and she's kind of, the girl down the street, the girl next door, kind of that character. So it's really funny to see her play those two different contrasting characters. And by the way, the only other thing I had was when he shouts at someone in the back seat, it sounds like that he's slowed down and on drugs. Like, I don't know if anybody else picked that up. It's like, stop, there's someone in the back seat. Is how, or maybe I'm on drugs. One of those things. I don't know which one of those is true.
All right, Brenda and Natalie call him a moron as they leave class. We see Reese, the security guard, snatching newspapers from the crowd as they see about Michelle's death. Paul asks why they're taking all the papers. Dean calls him a lunatic, and Reese gives him a quote and says she plans on keeping Pendleton the safest university. Natalie is appalled that Paul doesn't care about the woman's life. They watch on the news and see about Michelle's death. Brenda asks, what if there is a lunatic on campus? Damon says he's leaving town this weekend, so he's good. Brenda asked if anyone knew her, and Damon said he did know her. She gave great head. Tosh is on a golf dating site as Natalie walks in, apologizing for what happened last night. She hands her medicine and asks to make a call, so she turns her computer off, storming away. She checks her answering machine and grabs her yearbook. She was team captain with Michelle. Knock at the door, and Damon asks if she wants to come hang out. He asks if she's all right and offers to go someplace they can talk. He says he can be a good listener. They get in his car, and it struggles to crank up. They drive off and stop at a place in the woods. He asks about Michelle, and she's not ready to talk. He says he knows what she's going through. He says his girlfriend died. She was sick for a while. And then she realizes he's lying. He says Natalie is in need of loving, and he tries to kiss her. She punches him as he tries again. And then I just wrote, my man is relentless, trying again, but has to take a piss real quick before they leave. He's grabbed from behind with a rope around his neck, and Natalie wonders what's taking so long. She gets out of the car and says, shake it, let's go. She turns around, and a hooded figure is there. She gets in the car and locks it and tries to get it crunk up. The figure hooks the rope to the hitch as someone is on top of the car. It is Damon trying to say, don't start the car. As she drives away, Damon is pulled higher into the tree. The attacker kicks in the windshield as Natalie backs into the tree and Damon's body falls onto the car. Reese is watching Coffee and reenacting what she sees as Natalie runs in saying somebody killed him. She takes Reese to the scene of the crime, but nothing is there. Reese says, what the hell are you on? She says it's probably the same person who killed Michelle, and she says the gas attendant was arrested earlier. The group is sitting around, and Parker says Damon is probably pranking them, and he says he's out of town for a bachelor party. Parker says it's just like the urban legend. Parker says Damon knew the legend, and Natalie asks about the urban legend with the person with an axe in the back seat. She says these stories are made into reality. Parker tells Natalie to call up there and check on him. Natalie is yelled at by Tosh, and she leaves her room. She calls the lodge, but they can't give out confidential information. Natalie is in the library now, and she thinks she's being followed as she hears noises. She finds a book called The Encyclopedia of Urban Legends. Convenient. She's jump scared by Sasha, who has a Kama Sutra book. Natalie shows her the urban legend book, and Sasha says the gang high beam is definitely not a myth. She says she has to go. She has homework. Tosh is on the goth website flirting, and back to Natalie, who sees Damon checked out the urban legend book last. Tosh says she's getting ready and asks what room they're in, and she leaves the dorm. Tosh is in the bathroom getting cleaned up and goes back to her computer. Her computer says, yours, answering which room she's in. She's grabbed from behind and attacked. Natalie enters the room, but doesn't turn the light on and doesn't look, assuming Tosh is having sex again. Tosh is strangled to death as Natalie puts her headphones on. All right, Brian, this is the next set of scenes I got. What'd you think?
Yeah, talk about being ahead of its time with this whole subtext and this early scene here about news being suppressed that doesn't fit a certain narrative and what people in charge want you to think. But like Dustin mentioned, shout out to Loretta Devine, who probably is miscast as a security guard here. I don't know, but I love her so much.
Man, I was
Look,
say, we got
I love her so.
disagreement there, buddy. She's
Listen,
great.
let me preface it. I love her so much. It doesn't matter at all. And if you've seen the sequel, she has a much actually larger part, and she really grows on you. No matter what you think about it, about her in this one. But it's called, what the sequel's called, Final Cut, which would in fact turn out to not be the final cut. And I was going to save it for later, but there's apparently another requel in pre-production right now that's shooting for a 2023 production schedule release that has Loretta returning as well as Rebecca Gayheart. Bet you can't guess what they're going to call it. Very uniquely named Urban Legend.
No.
Wow.
I did see that this morning too. I'm still going to watch though.
anyway, the she gave great head pun. I did the DiCaprio meme pointing at the screen when I heard that. I was like, good one, Damon. Good one. I liked it. Funny story about Danielle Harris. I actually think I heard her talk about this on the podcast, on her podcast. But she was actually a smoker and was initially excited about being able to smoke on set here. But kind of like Gayheart and the pop rock scene from the last group, she had to smoke so much for so many different takes. It made her sick. And that's actually what helped her to quit smoking. But Natalie picking up the phone and kicking her off America Online, I felt that. Like, you other 90s kids, you felt that too. Trust me. So many fights in my household because of that. But I did like the little twist of Natalie knowing Michelle, even if it wasn't, a real big payoff or anything. It did kind of add some depth there. And even if Michelle looked about 45 in those yearbook pictures, you notice they had 2 pages and 6 pictures in that yearbook, and 3 were the exact same picture, just zoomed in differently. It's just, and I think Mike was talking about this little Dawson's Creek when he and Josh Jackson cranks up the car and you get the "I don't want to wait." Mike could do that better, but I see what you did there, you rascal.
Love to be over. Or the Eric Cartman version. I don't want to wait. Oh, sorry.
You're a rascal, Jamie Blanks. I see you. But now props to the soundtrack as Josh Jackson was getting strangled. But knowing what we know later about the killer, come on. Like, is she doing that really? Like, just logistically and physically speaking here, that alone makes me just about this whole Saw-esque trap we have here. And big problem I have with the movie that, I'll kind of get into more as we go along. But last thing I say is the killer's look. Technically the outfit is based on the fact that apparently it was originally supposed to be set in the middle of winter. But in real time, when the winter turned out to be too warm, they decided to kind of drop the whole winter aspect of the storyline instead of going fake snow for all the outside shots, which this whole Eskimo jacket thing never really resonated with me personally. They changed that up for the sequel, and I like it a lot better. It just wasn't scary enough, in my opinion. But I do like Tosh's kill, though, because of the setup we get earlier. But look, Natalie is fucking nasty. Brush your damn teeth before you get into that bed. Like, she just walked in and got in the bed. Fucking cavity gingivitis ass having. All right, go ahead, Mike.
No comment on that. It happens sometimes. I'm just kidding. I brush my teeth most of the time. Anyway, okay. So I really like what we get into here with Damon and Natalie in the car. Like, I think it's just like the assholishness of Damon. He gets told no, and he's a little too persistent, if you ask me. And I think the moment where they turn on the Dawson's Creek theme got me. It was a meta moment that I'm like, and like you, anytime there's like a meta moment that's not in a Scream movie, because those are just what they are. There's a meta moment. I'm a Leonardo DiCaprio meme for sure. I'm like, see, they did that. So I like that, and I like the kill. Like, I understand what you're saying, and I'm going to get into my problem with the killer reveal later. But I think the kill itself is fine. I think the twist of Natalie, I think the twist of Natalie knowing Natasha is good, because it at least makes the ending make a little more sense later on. So, I think it's good. And here's the thing. I actually really love Tasha's kill. I hate that we're losing Danielle Harris so early, but they set it up so well. She walked in on her having sex. That was gross for her. So she thinks it's happening again. So we put on headphones. And I don't know if you ever lived with a roommate, but when you hear that, banga banga down the hall, man, you crank the music up, you put the headphones in. I don't have time to listen to all this stuff. I'm not out here like some weirdo Jeffrey Dahmer guy. I'm not, getting my rocks off over here. I'm putting my headphones on, I'm going to sleep. So I think they set that kill up really well. That was one of the more smarter writing points I think this movie had, in my opinion. So I think this is a fun set of scenes. Like, I think there's some good, intense, or just some suspenseful action happening here. And it's not just full on, 90s meta schlocky stuff. Like, there's just some actual good stuff here. I do agree with you though, Brian. I don't love the look of the killer. I normally don't complain about that, because to me, it doesn't ever really distract me when a killer doesn't look like Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees or whoever. As long as it's different than another already established killer, I'm normally okay with it. But in this case, I'm going to reference Boy Meets World, and I think Dustin knows what I'm talking about, but the killer looks like the fat guy that's sitting on the billboard when Sean's trying to get Super Bowl tickets. The Samoan guy. We are warm and you are cold. That's a Boy Meets World reference. Only 2 of you will get, but you're very welcome for it. No, I'm not a big fan of the look of the killer, which is tough for me to say, because I pretty much like generally every look of every slasher that we get. So fun scenes. I think the kills are good here. And I really, so again, really good set of scenes. And I think it's so different from the first set to me, as far as it's a little more serious. And I like that about it. It sets it apart.
Yeah. So, first of all, something I noticed in this set of scenes that I didn't realize how many times I've noticed it is, I always think it's funny when they show something on a TV in a movie or a show and everyone's sitting around listening to it. But as soon as they're done showing the audience what the relevant information on the screen is, the volume goes completely silent. You never hear the TV again. So like that really stood out in the opening part of this set of scenes. Anyway, don't let it happen again from Tosh here. It's like, bitch, you were the one ass up in your dorm with the lights on. Like, that's your fault.
That's I'm
your fault.
Saying. That's what I'm
You don't have nothing on the doorknob. You put a sock on the doorknob, a tie, a belt, something to let your roommate know, hey, some shit's going down in here. We're having some down yonder time. But no. So anyway, then when she finds the pill bottle there, lithium, man, that's some intense shit. Like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with lithium, but lithium is a medication for
a song by Nirvana. Oh, my bad.
I know lithium batteries.
Yep. Yeah. The same shit. So it's medication for a slew of mental illnesses, depression being one of them. It almost killed Johnny Manziel. You cannot drink alcohol while you're on lithium, because if you have alcohol, it dehydrates you. And with lithium, when you're on it, if you get the slightest bit dehydrated, you can get salt poisoning. And I don't know why I know that. Well, I do know why I know that much about lithium, but that just, when I saw lithium, I was like, holy shit, this girl's on some intense, like that's a last resort medication. Anyway, very typical that the car is having problems starting here. It's like that's one of those things. It's like you could definitely predict that. But I will
They
say though,
in their defense, they at least set that up.
well, yeah, they did, but that doesn't to me make it any better just because it's been done so many times. Like who could have seen that coming? Um, especially like when they need the car to start. No, but I will say it's a pretty awesome setup though with the rope pulley system to hang him. Like that was pretty awesome. As she drives off, he's raised and hung there. That was pretty good visual. When Natalie walked back into her dorm, though, I totally expected Tasha to just be getting railed to metal music again. And so, like, that's just what I was expecting. But, we didn't get that clearly. Then we go to the library. It's a very typical horror stuff when someone's moving in the shadows and then she turns her head and we see someone move behind them. That's very typical stuff, but still, I like the way that was shot, the way that was done. But we had another stupid jump scare. Like jump scares, they're pointless. Like that, she wasn't in any danger. It wasn't the killer. It was just a stupid one. So I hated that. Another thing that stood out to me though was the urban legend of the high beam thing. Like I definitely remember that being a story that went around when I was first starting to drive. Like you were definitely told, hey, if you see a car with their lights on or lights off at night, don't flash your lights to try to turn them on. They could follow you and then kill you. Like I remember that, and I'd forgotten all about that until I rewatched this movie. And then when we talk about Tasha's death, that definitely did not sound like sex to me. Like I get it, like sex can sound different, and especially if it's some rough sex, like it might sound like it's pain, but good God, that did not sound like sex. And I get also wanting to follow the urban legend here. And, no deaths are happening unless it's part of an urban legend. But there's no way that a killer would kill Tosh and leave Natalie there in the room. That's a witness. That's a witness, bro. And you're just going to let her sleep through it? I ain't buying it. And then, I get it, you put headphones on to go to sleep. But this motherfucker is painting with blood on the wall above your bed and you just sleep right through it? All right, cool. But overall, it's a decent set of scenes. There's I'm really, by this point, I'm remembering, oh yeah, like there's a lot of typical stuff in this. Some typical horror tropes are being explored in this one.
Natalie wakes up the next morning and sees blood on the floor and Tasha's dead body on her bed. She sees the words, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?" written in blood on the wall. Brenda walks up to Paul and he asks how is she. Natalie is being asked why she didn't turn on the lights. Reese asks if she saw someone in the room, and the dean says it appears to be a tragic suicide. They say it's a very morbid suicide note. Brenda hugs, asking if she's all right now. Paul walks up on Natalie and says, "I know it's a bad time for you," but he has to ask some questions. He asks her about the picture of her and Michelle. He contacted their old high school and asked, "Why didn't you tell me you went to school together?" Natalie says she was murdered just like Michelle and Damon. She shows him the urban legend book, and he says the idea of an urban legend serial killer is a stretch. He plays devil's advocate and asks, if it's true, why now? She says it's the 25th anniversary of Stanley Hall Massacre. He takes her to do some research, and the book on 1973 isn't there. He asks the janitor how long's he been working here, and he asks about Stanley Hall. The janitor says he doesn't know what he's talking about, and says to talk to Wexler. They knock on his office door, but no answer. Paul breaks in, and they look around. Natalie opens a closet and finds the same jacket as the killer. She goes into the closet and finds an axe and calls for Paul. They close the door as they hear the professor enter the office. They go to sneak back out and assume he's gone, but he's hiding behind a door. They're all in the dean's office, and Paul asks about the Stanley Hall massacre. Dean dismisses Reese and the professor. He brings up her personal file, probation for reckless endangerment, and he says Paul is off the newspaper. Have a good weekend, and they storm out. He asks about her reckless endangerment, and he says he doesn't buy what she's saying anymore. The meteorologist says it's going to be a bad storm tonight, and Natalie sees the killer walk inside the pool room as Brenda is swimming. Natalie runs to grab a chair and bashes the window as she sees it's just another swimmer. Brenda says nothing is going to happen to me, and Natalie reveals to her she knew Michelle. They hadn't spoken in 2 years. She tells the story of Michelle and her 2 years ago, and they did the high beam prank. They chased the car, flashing their high beams. She wanted to tell her to stop, but didn't. The other car drove off the road, losing control. By the time the ambulance got there, he was already dead. The courts only gave us probation. Natalie says she couldn't forgive her for what she did. Brenda tells Natalie she needs to relax and have some fun. She says she won't leave her side unless she hooks up with Paul. Paul finds an article that Wexler was the only survivor of the Stanley Hall massacre. The dean goes to his car, but makes sure he checks his back seat. He's jump scared by Reese, who says to add a few guards this weekend just in case. He says don't contact any parents or police without my permission. She walks away and he has his Achilles sliced. He crawls away as the hooded figure comes from under the car and turns on his high beams and lets off the parking brake. The car rolls towards them, running him over and piercing his body to the spikes. All right, Brian, that's the next set of scenes I got. What'd you think?
All right, so right off the bat, I'm just not the biggest fan of the performance that Ashley Witt gave when she finds Tasha's body. It didn't seem realistic at all to me. But also, props to the killer for having magnificent, almost stencil-like handwriting on the wall. And honestly, was that comment by the bitchy girl, better check her pulse, she'd look like that for years, was that necessary to have in there? Like, it just kind of seems super unrealistic to me. Fun fact, that girl is actually Angelina Vent, and she was in an episode of Black Mirror called The Archangel. Good episode. But also super unrealistic with the admins of the college interviewing Natalie and literally no police. Like, don't think they leave, the homicide investigation for campus security, but hey, what do I know? Okay, so this may be a little controversial, but all right. So the scene with Englund is, of course, fantastic because he's in it. But will you think I'm a hater if I say I do think that they made him too much of a red herring? I think they went overboard a little bit. Like any scenes with the Great Robert in it, the better. But I mean, the coat, the axe, I kind of felt was a little overkill. Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, and partially because he's not the only red herring they use. So I think there's almost like so much like, oh, it could be him. Oh, it could be him. Oh, and that's not necessarily a bad thing in a whodunit, but there's almost like too many red herrings where it's process of elimination, and now it's got to be one of these people. So I tend to agree with you. I think because they came on so strong, like I think he's a good red herring early, but this is the scene where I'm like, it's obviously not him.
Yeah, and like I said, I just think they overdid a little bit. And why doesn't Natalie immediately recognize the coat when she sees it? Like she faced off with the killer in the woods on the car. So I don't get that either. But she didn't say anything about it. Nothing. Just looked at it. But anyway, there's a lot of really good shots here. Shout out to Blanks, of course, but also Jim Chrysanthus, who was a cinematographer. Chrysanthus also did Witches of Eastwick in Chicago. There's a funny little tidbit that if you know Latin, you have the movie spoiled. All throughout the school seal, is shown, and the motto written in Latin translate as "the best friend did it." You can see it here in the dean's office, which is just funny when you know that now. But speaking of Dean, rest in peace to John Neville, who passed away back in 2011. But I rolled my eyes at the swimming pool scene. Like, maybe this whole thing was written and worked when it was originally winter, but why would anybody be wearing a fucking parka in the dead of summer, walking out from outside into the swimming pool area, which we know is super hot? I mean, come on, like it. But the scene did remind me a little bit of that Scream 2 recording studio scene. Again, with the flashback and crying scene between Natalie and Brenda, I don't know. It's just I continue to dislike Natalie's character, and at this point, I'm just kind of rooting for the killer, like a killer who, I mean, look, the hill wasn't really high enough for that car to kill the dean, but I didn't expect the spikes. Like, it was very nice touch there, nice touch. But I thought it was a little much panning up to the severe tire damage sign. I was like, yeah, whatever. But anyway, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so I actually really like this set of scenes because I think it sets up so much. I think when we finally get into the like, we're about to get into the whodunit aspect of this. And, that, look, every time I've seen Danielle Harris die on screen, it's either been this or Rob Zombie's or I guess she didn't die in Rob Zombie's Halloween in the first one, but she did die in the second one. And she's normally naked, so it was nice to, not see her die, naked, which I think is gratuitous sometimes. But anyway, all right. look, I like all this stuff with Jared Leto and his character Paul. Like, I think this is the most normal character I've ever seen Jared Leto play, which is kind of strange. But this, to me, this reporter character, again, I keep thinking of Scream because it almost comes off as like this Gale Weathers-esque, kind of digging in a little bit nicer than Gale would do, obviously, but like trying to get to the bottom of it. And it's funny because at the end of this scene where they break into Robert Englund's classroom and find the coat and they find the axe and they go to the dean and the dean kicks him off the paper and doesn't really have any kind of big punishment for Natalie. He gets mad at her, but he's the one that broke into the office in the first place. Like, he literally took the card, swiped it until it worked to open the door. He's the one that put the whole thing out there in the first place because she wasn't going to do it. She was just going to knock on the door, and he wasn't there. She was going to walk away. So I think that he had no right to be pissed at her. But I agree with you, Brian. They go almost too far in the direction of Robert Englund that it makes me immediately at that moment go, it's not him. Like, I think they did a good job early on, which is why I said it. But at this point, I have this feeling, well, if it's him, then they did too much. They gave away too much, and I think that's a bad reveal. So kind of keeping the attention on him, I think, in a more discreet way would have been much, much better. But they kind of go all in. If he's got the axe and he's got the coat, it's obviously not him. So this scene with the swimming pool gave me serious Swim Fan vibes, a movie that I'm going to pick someday. I know it's not technically a horror, but it's a really good thriller, and I'm going to pick it. So just get ready for that. But, oh, man, Swim Fan's great. What you talking about, buddy? Anyway, but it gave me major Swim Fan vibes. But this set of scenes does a good job of kind of making it look like Natalie's going crazy. We, the audience, know these things are actually happening. But if you're on the outside looking in, all these deaths are connected to Natalie. And she's breaking a window. Like, all this stuff looks bad from the outsider's perspective. So I think they do a pretty good job of setting that up. Whether you're a fan of the character of Natalie or not, I think that they do a pretty good job of making it seem like all these deaths are somehow connected to her. And if you're the police or whoever, you're kind of like, well, all this stuff's kind of coming up you right now. So I think that was good. And I like this Dean character because he's such an ass. And he's clearly covering up the massacre that took place. And I think when he gets killed, I actually like this kill. I like how often do we get an Achilles slash in a movie? I think that was a really fun little difference, or like a different thing there. I wish that would have been what killed him, not necessarily being run over with his car. But all in all, I think this is a good set of scenes because it sets up so much later in the film.
Yeah. So first of all, I think we get a very half-assed assessment from the Dean and Reese to just write it off. They're like, oh, it's suicide. Well, it's called due diligence, bud. You got to do it sometimes. Very typical cliche, though, of someone being right and then no one believing her. Like, it's very common in horror movies. We see it all the time. The creepy janitors, another very creepy or very cliche thing to add in this movie as well. To me, it got kind of, I don't want to say annoying, 'cause that's not really the word I'm looking for, but this movie just tries so hard to keep you off the track of who the killer is. Like, it's too much at times. We got the gas station attendant, you got the janitor, you got the professor. Is it Natalie? It just feels like a cheap way to create some drama and tension.
Yeah, that's fair.
So we get the story of them. I kind of laugh when we get the story about them running the guy off the road, because it's like, would she get reckless endangerment for that, like, as a passenger? I don't know. I get it's her car and she could have said stop, but what are you going to do if the person says, fuck you, I'm not stopping? So I have questions about that legal process there, and whether or not she got a bum rap as a passenger in that car. But last thing I put is, man, what a death. To be ran over by a Benz on tire spikes. Like, holy shit. So if nothing else, I would give this movie creativity for that one. That was fucking awesome to see. So it's not a bad set of scenes. It's just, to me, this is when I go from, oh, all right, I like this movie, to, oh, wait a minute, they're kind of doing a lot of cliche things, to, in this set, it seems like, God dang, man, this movie is one big 90s horror cliche. I don't hate it still. It's still entertaining, but it's just, it takes away from it to me.
We're at the party now as Parker eggs the crowd on, cheering for his dog. Brenda hugs Natalie as she goes to get her a drink. Paul walks up and says Stanley Hall had one survivor. Paul tried to call the cops, but Dean Adams beat him to it. They are expecting prank calls. He apologizes for doubting her. She asks what he's trying to do to me. I'm so scared. He promises nothing will happen to her, and they kiss. Brenda walks up on it, and she's infuriated. She hands her the beer and walks away pissed off. The janitor scares Reese as she hears some glass breaking. She finds Wexler's office ransacked. She backs out the closet and slips in a pool of blood. Paul grabs Parker and says he might want to end this party. Natalie was right. Parker says turn the music off and says Paul thinks we should end the party. Parker tells Paul he should leave so everyone else can have a good time. Paul tells Natalie to stay here. He's going to go find help. Sasha says she's going to go to the radio station. Parker answers the phone and he's told you're going to die tonight. It's from Damon Brooks' number. Parker rambles on. This is coming from inside the house tonight, mockingly. He says this is the one where the old lady tries to dry her wet dog in the microwave. Parker runs to his microwave and finds his dog dead, and it's disgusting looking. He runs to the bathroom to puke, but is grabbed from behind by the killer, who has his head bashed into the toilet. The killer ties him to the toilet and puts the funnel in his mouth with pop rocks and drain cleaner, killing him. Reese is on the phone with the police, and she goes off on them for not taking her serious. I'll do it myself, she says. Natalie calls Paul, but only gets his voicemail. Sasha is on a call, but the line suddenly disconnects. She sees the killer, who breaks the glass with an axe. She takes off running, and Natalie listens to the chaos at the party. Natalie runs from the party to the station. The killer grabs Sasha and tosses her over the stair ledge. She holds on dearly, but lets go when the axe is slashed at her. Sasha limps away and onto the elevator before the killer can catch her. Sasha hides in a room as Reese hears what's going on over her radio. Sasha sees Natalie below, but the killer enters the room with her. She falls to the floor. Please, I don't want to die, as the killer hacks her to death. The killer waves at Natalie now. Natalie finds Paul and she tells him Sasha is dead. She now asks, where was he all night? She grows suspicious of him and he says, let's get out of here. Brenda appears and asks what's happening. The three run off. Reese finds Sasha's dead body. She calls for Dean Adams, but no answer. Natalie asks if they smell something. Brenda says stop at this gas station to see if their phones work. He stops and goes inside. Brenda apologizes for acting like a jerk and the two hug. A phone suddenly rings from the trunk and they find Professor Wexler's dead body. The two take off running and Paul chases after them. Natalie loses Brenda and she hears her scream as Paul calls for her. Natalie gets to the road and stops a truck. It's the janitor. She gets in his truck and he asks if she's okay. She sees the coat and is terrified. She says, let me out right here, and tries to get out, but the door won't open. Suddenly, a car with no lights on appears, and he flashes his lights at them. The car U-turns and chases after them, flashing their lights. They knock the janitor off the road, crashing, and it kills him, and Natalie gets out of the truck and runs away. And the next set of scenes are the ending. Go ahead, Brian.
So now we head to Stu Macher's house for the party in the third act. Oh, wait, wrong movie. And look, I know a lot of people say that this movie gets compared a lot to I Know What You Did Last Summer, and that's not a stretch because, actually Jamie Blanks wanted to actually direct last summer. But that job was already given to Jim Gillespie. That was it. Hot take. I would have liked to seen Jamie Blanks do it as much as I do like last summer, but this was produced by the same guy, Neil Moritz, who did that as well. So it's not really a stretch to even put them in the same family. But personally, I'm with Mike. I think that this movie follows more of the same beats to Scream than it does last summer.
Yeah, me too.
But that's just my personal opinion. Is it mean that while I was watching Natalie and Paul have their conversation on the staircase, I just wanted someone to please stab Natalie here? I mean, the exchange was just cringeworthy, and and then she just made out with him. What a fucking shitty friend! Like, then doesn't even go outside to find her, but just sticks around inside. But Hey, Zoot Suit Riot. Throw back a bottle of beer. Um, and I love Julian Richings when he bumps into Reese and she's freaking out and he just says, boo. And that's perfect, like, fuck you, Reese tone. But I am confused on the logistics here. Like, Reese walks into Wexler's office, looks around, then backs up right where she's already been. And suddenly there's fucking like lake of blood. So she didn't see that before. I don't know. Maybe I'm confused. Like I said, on the logistics here, but yeah, okay. Last thing, putting aside the fact that no way Brenda is doing that to Parker, overpowering him like that, the visuals of the microwave and somebody actually being killed with pop rocks is pretty fucking awesome. But I've always loved the radio station setup, that whole scene with Sasha. Fun fact, Tara Reid actually did all of her own stunts here, including the fall over the staircase, according to Reid. So this can probably be taken with a grain of salt depending on when Tara Reid was talked to. But she says
That's
this.
fair. That's fair,
She does say that the stunt man who performed the scene used a real axe, which, if you wanted realism, why are you using a man for the stunts when the killer is a woman? Spoiler alert. But anyway,
whatever.
Reid did have a good performance here, I thought. The rest of it was fine, I guess. The jokes from Brenda and the convo about Paul with Natalie kind of seemed out of place, honestly, in the situation, but it's fine. I mean, there's a lot going on in this set of scenes. Maybe too much, too quick, even. Like it's a little bit of a rush to the finish here.
Yeah, there's a point in this set of scenes, though, Brian, that I'm kind of like, all right, let's maybe move it along here a little bit too. So I think both things can be true where they try to cram so much. I'm kind of like, well, if you're going to do that, just get to it. Just, let's move on and find out the killer and then go from there with the motive situation. So, yeah, this set of scenes is fine. Like, I think, the fact that there's a big party in the third act is literally beat by beat the Scream playbook, which is fine. It's much different. It has a different vibe. Honestly, Brian, this is like Scream and Valentine, because if you remember the big Valentine's Day party that they throw at the end of Valentine, this kind of has that vibe to me. So, like, that makes sense now because, again, Valentine's kind of the last Scream, not knockoff, but, in that same vein. So, I actually like this interaction with Parker and Paul. Like, I think Parker's being such an arrogant asshole, and we haven't yet had a character on screen that we normally get from a slasher that, hey, I want the killer to get this motherfucker. Parker is that guy, especially in this scene where he's such an over-the-top asshole. And the fact that the killer gets him, I think the stuff with the microwave looks good. I think his kill is good. I like the phone call that's coming from inside the house, a very When a Stranger Calls reference. I think that's fun stuff. It's a little bit of the meta that you look for in these late 90s slashers here. I think that's fine. This stuff with Brenda and Natalie, her crying and all that stuff, like, I don't know, like, especially with what we know is coming, like, it just didn't sell me then, and it definitely doesn't sell me now when you know what the reveal is. So it's fine. It's whatever. I think the chase stuff with Tara Reid's character, Sasha, goes a little too long. Like, and that's not to discredit the acting job that I think Tara Reid did. I think she's actually really good here, but I do think that it goes on just a little long for me. But it's intense and it has its moments, but it goes just a little long in the tooth. And look, Dustin made a great point. The creepy janitor coming back into the movie here really bugs me because that is a cliche and a trope. The creepy janitor is that is a trope for a red herring. There's always some kind of creepy, off-putting guy that's kind of not in the main cast, but he's in the cast. Boy Meets World literally made fun of it. So it is a trope within the horror genre, and you just knew the minute she got in the truck, it wasn't going to be him. It's too easy. It makes too much sense. So that was a dead giveaway that it wasn't him. And so him being killed makes sense to me. So I think this is an okay set of scenes, but I am ready to get to the end and get to the reveal.
Yeah. First of all, man, what a hoe. Natalie, You know Brenda's got a thing for Paul, and you just couldn't keep your tongue in your mouth. Just
Thank
proves
you.
one thing. Proves one thing that I've always known to be true. Women aren't even loyal to each other. So why do we expect them to be loyal to us men? Anyway. I'm kidding. But Reese walking into that room, you're trying to tell me she didn't notice all that damn blood on the floor before she slipped and fell in it. Come on, man. That wasn't a little bit of blood, and she walked right over it the first time. But whatever. It's very Scream-like here when he's chasing, or when the killer is chasing Sasha through the radio station. Which Scream is it when Gail and Dewey are in the? Scream 2. You mentioned that earlier. It's like, okay, come on. I was waiting for someone to be trapped in a soundproof room and
right.
be shot 15 times in the back. But taking the elevator, I laughed my ass off when they go down. She drops down, avoids the axe swing, drops down to the ground level, gets in the elevator, and then goes back up one floor where they just came from. That is a brilliant exit strategy there. It's very lame that we don't get any looks at Sasha's death here, and like we don't even get any blood. Like that was annoying. I didn't need a lot, but we didn't get to see any of it, so that sucked. And look, I get being scared and on the run.
Yeah,
but you don't know for sure that it's Paul. Like you are running from this gas station, you think Paul's the killer, you're pretty sure, but you're not sure. And I would have my doubts if it's him, especially when
for sure. I thought
when
that
I open the back of that Jeep and I look inside and I make eye contact with him and I notice he's not freaking out that I'm looking in the back of this Jeep. Does he know there's a dead body back here? And so then you just take off running and you jump in the janitor's truck, who's been creepy as shit this whole time. So I don't know, that annoyed me, especially just reintroducing him at all annoyed me. But then you're just gonna have him have her be that trustworthy. Like she deserved to die right then. Even if the janitor wasn't the killer, there would have been a nice way to just make him be like, oh, bonus mission, kill.
Bonus mission.
And then, so you're telling me that a wreck that kills the janitor on impact didn't hurt her at all, and she's able to just jump out and start running? Get the fuck out of here. Like, not even a broken clavicle. She's just like, hey, I'm fine. Unlimited health points over here. So I've got issues with that because, like, he died. He was DED dead on impact, and she just hops out like she does this shit every day. But, so yeah, again, just like the last set of scenes, I start to get kind of annoyed with the Scream and the typical 90s, I don't want to say rip-offs, but kind of rip-offs.
Well, you're absolutely right, because it can't be the love interest, right? Like it's in too many of these movies to make it Paul makes no sense. Like that's not a reveal that I care to see, and I don't think that's a smart one either, because literally Scream, that's the reveal. Like that's kind of how that works. That's why the reboot kind of redid that same thing, because it was supposed to be a requel of the original. So like to have it be the love interest, the minute they thought it was Paul, I was like, it's not Paul. It can't be Paul. That's dumb. That's a dumb move to make. So to have it be the love interest, I think would have been dumb. So to have them run away from him like that, I'm like, you guys are so stupid. Oh, jeez.
All right, guys, here's the last set of scenes. Reese gets her gun as Natalie buzzes the emergency radio. She hears Brenda screaming from the abandoned building and climbs into a window. She goes upstairs as Brenda calls for help. She enters a room and the door slams behind her. Natalie screams when she sees Parker's body fall out of a closet. She now finds a Dean's body and Damon's dead body. She goes into a room lit with candles and finds Brenda on a bed. She sits up and punches her, knocking her out. Natalie wakes up bound to the bed and mouth taped up. She says she'll remove the gag if she doesn't scream. Natalie calls her crazy. Brenda says the man Natalie and Michelle killed was her boyfriend, the love of her life. They were to get married that summer. Brenda says she's already tried therapy and it did no good. And she kind of enjoys killing. She's going to do the kidney heist on her. She plans to frame Wexler for all of this. Natalie begs her not to do this. She puts the tape back over her mouth and begins to stab her with a scalpel. She cuts her and says, "First organ I see, I'm going to grab." Reese arrives. Drop the weapon. She lets Natalie's hand free and has Brenda walk to the wall. Brenda turns around and slashes her with a knife. The two fight now, and Brenda grabs the gun and stops Natalie. Paul arrives and says, "Well done." He says, "This is what I need, details from every murder." Paul says, "Give me the gun," and she says, "You're cute, but not that fucking cute. Well, who do I kill first?" Reese sits up and shoots Brenda in the upper arm. Natalie grabs the gun and shoots Brenda, and she falls out the window. He asks if she's all right. She quickly says no as they hug. They check on Reese and they go to get her help. She tells him this will be a legend too, you know. Brenda sits up and swings the axe at them. She and Natalie fight in the back seat. They hit the side of the bridge and it launches Brenda out the windshield and into the water below. We see another group of teens telling this urban legend. No one believes. He asks, "Does anyone here believe me?" And Brenda sits down and says, "I believe you, but you didn't tell it right. This is how the story really goes." And that's the ending. Brian, what'd you think? I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, how the hell did the killer go from chasing Natalie in the car to being in that old
Thank
broken
you.
down house? Like,
Yeah, what the fuck?
I guess that's supposed to be Stanley Hall, though. But anyway,
She Michael Myers?
how did she get to that fucking Stanley Hall before Natalie did? I mean, I don't know. This is why I think that there should have been two killers. Like, Paul should have been the other one. Maybe that's too much like Scream, but it would have helped at least the believability here and my issues throughout, because guess what? Brenda's not doing all that shit the whole time. That's crazy. But speaking of my issues, first of all, let me just say that I like the motive that having nothing to do with Stanley Hall, like, at all. And basically that was just a red herring throughout. But anyway, one of my issues about this ending, I don't know if you've seen Urban Legends Final Cut or not, but if this was a standalone movie, you could take this ending, the whole ending scene, like with those urban legend, like with the students talking about the events, and take this whole story as just like it was just an exaggerated urban legend that had been being told the whole time. Like exaggerated stuff like this maybe didn't really happen that way. So then you could kind of give Brenda a pass for Rebecca Gayheart, being super strong and carrying people around. But the sequel kind of ruins that, honestly. But hot take, I actually like the sequel. But maybe we'll get into that later. But anyway, all in all, Rebecca Gayheart does a great damn job. Dang, 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 dang. So good. Dustin, I don't know, but does she kind of remind you of Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns here?
Oh, dude. I'm so glad you said
Now,
that.
hold on. Yes, you can ask me too. I've seen Batman Return. Come on, man.
Okay, all right. So you agree?
Yes.
Yeah, especially in this last,
Yes,
just in the last set of scenes, because when I was watching it, I was like, man, she would have been a great Catwoman. Her eyes are fucking huge, like a cat.
There you go. And I was just wondering, maybe it was just me because we just did that DD Pfeiffer interview. Don't go out there.com. And I had, Pfeiffer's on the mind, maybe. But anyway, it's kind of funny we have a visual.
Mind, brother.
It is kind of funny, though. We have a visual fucking aid in this last scene. She has a fucking PowerPoint presentation going on.
Oh, I thought that was great. I was so
Lucky for you, we have a visual aid.
I think they spoofed that in Austin Powers or something. I don't remember what it was, but at the end, when the students are recounting the events, one of the students comments, "Yeah, and Brenda was the girl from the Noxzema commercials. Rebecca Gayheart was the Noxzema girl in real life for that commercial." So another little Easter egg there. But all in all, it was all right.
Yeah, so I don't love the reveal itself. Like, I don't like, as much as they focus on the urban legends in this movie, the reveal itself has really nothing to do with any of them. Like, it's a revenge plot, and I think the writing there kind of falls apart, in my opinion. Like, I like that urban legend idea, and all the killings were kind of following that pattern. But when you get to the end and who it is, and it's Brenda, like, it's not even that I'm against it being Brenda. I just don't think her motivation is great. Now, that being said, Rebecca Gayheart is fantastic when she gets to go all bonkers on Natalie. Like, that is really, like, I think she's great. She makes the Miss Thang and dang, like all the ding, ding, ding stuff. Like, all of that I think is fantastic work from her. And I just think the ending also gets a little convoluted. You bring Paul back. Like, there's so much, like, going on that I think just a simple having Natalie overcome Brenda on her own, just kind of make it real simple and end it there. I think you could have shaved about 8 to 9 minutes off of this, had a nice, tired little film, and I think it would have been fine. I still don't love the motive for the killer. Like, I get it because they at least set it up earlier in the movie, but it kind of got away from the general plot line throughout, where you have all these different urban legends, including the one they made on their own canvas, and just ended up being, a revenge kill. And I didn't love that. Like, I wish there would have been some different motivation there. I'm sorry, I'm going back 3 sets of scenes. When Nico mentioned how convenient the urban legend book was, I meant to talk about it then, buddy. I literally pointed at the screen. I said, "Oh, how fucking convenient!" So I thought that was funny. I had it in my notes, wanted to make sure I covered it. But no, all in all, the last 2 sets of scenes kind of dragged the movie down just a little bit. There's some good stuff there, but I think the final act here, while it's well performed and well acted, I just don't love the creative direction that they took.
Yeah. You mentioned, how did she have time to get there? How did she get time to light that many fucking candles, bro? Dude, that was so many. That was the most unbelievable thing in the whole movie. That was so many. And it's a huge fire hazard. What are you doing? But one thing that I didn't like in this end was I hated the personality switch after the twist. Like, having Brenda be the killer's fine, but her personality was just like a complete 180. And that's not exclusive to this movie. A lot of movies do that. Once there's a twist reveal, the person turns out to be insane, and her hair got all frizzy all of a sudden, and her eyes were wider than ever, and she was over the top in her acting and emotions. That's not who she was the rest of the movie. So you're telling me that her friend wouldn't have picked up along the way that, hey, she might have a screw loose? Don't believe that shit. Man, I love Loretta Devine, but Reese might be the worst campus police officer ever. Because she's got her held at gunpoint and says, "Don't move," and then proceeds to let her move to the point where she got her titty cut open. Like, that's just, come on. Terrible police work there.
I thought that was her titty. I saw it and I was like, what was that?
Yeah, she slashed her right across the titties. But, and then, okay. Why were they driving? Like, I get when I'm first watching this, because I don't know if, the scene we get where they're driving off after that, if that's just part of the next crop of students telling the story, or if that's supposed to be what really happened. But wouldn't the cops tell them to stay on the scene? And why the fuck was she in the back seat? They just load up her body when they thought she was dead. And how was she not dead? How was she not dead at all? Because she's sitting there on the couch talking to the new crop of students. And if not dead, at least severely injured and unable to sling an axe like that. I don't know. That little, they should have just wrapped it up neater there. But and then after they realize she's in the back seat, he just keeps driving. He doesn't slam on the brakes. That seems like stopping would be your best option if you're trying to fight a murderer that's in your back seat. But it's not a terrible ending. I like the twist. I like Brenda being it. Like I said, it's just too over the top in some areas, too cliche in others, and it's just pretty okay.
All right, guys, any final thoughts on the ending, or you want to jump into social media? All right, let's knock out Twitter first. Well, never mind. They kicked me off of it. Let's do Facebook first. Michelle Mirza commented, "I really enjoy this movie. I remember hearing about most of the urban legends in the movie as a kid. Which urban legends do you guys remember hearing about when you were kids?" And Randy Smith, another fan of the show, commented, "The Pop Rocks and Coke for sure." And I'm going to agree with that one, because that urban legend had me in a stranglehold. I'm still kind of scared of that one, to be honest.
I heard of the hook on the car thing that was basically used for I Know What You Did Last Summer. That one sticks out in my head from being told.
Yeah, the one that I definitely remember the most, and the one that stuck with me the most, is, like I said, if you see another driver with their lights off, don't flash your lights to get them turned on, because they're going to turn around and kill you. Like, that was a real in East Tennessee, and the early to mid 2000s. Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, oh, fuck you, man. You're just gonna have to wreck. I ain't telling you to turn your lights on.
Facts.
Yep.
The only one I really have is Richard Gere and a gerbil. That's all I got. That's all I'm gonna say.
I did hear that one too, unfortunately.
All right.
None of my business what you do, Richard. None of my business.
Go on. I'm listening.
No. I'll just say Lemmy Winks. You'll get the reference. There you go.
I think we've got it.
Okay.
Randy Smith commented, "Wow, to be 14 again. I love this movie. Maybe the nostalgia kicks in, but it's one of the better early 2000s horror movies. I love the Josh Jackson and the Dawson's Creek intro part. Don't act like you didn't watch Dawson's Creek. I watched it vaguely, but I don't remember too much of it, honestly. But that's just me.
Never watched a single episode.
I never watched a single episode until last year. My wife started watching it, and so I would see bits and pieces of it, but it didn't really stick with me.
I'm a fan. It's Kevin Williamson. I'm a fan.
Fair enough. Let's jump over to Twitter. The only comment we got on Twitter was from a teammate of the show, Kevin Scanlon. It's been a long time since I've seen this one. Guess I know what I'm watching tonight. And just Pluto TV has this movie for free on streaming if you want to check it out. Let's go over to Instagram. We got quite a few comments. Jay Hambrick88 commented, I watched it for the first time about 3 years ago, and I really enjoyed it and still do. Hell yeah, brother. Alex1 commented, I slept on this one after lumping it in with those other late 90s, early 2000s slashers that had similar movie posters. But it's a more than decent movie with an impressive cast. Definitely worth a watch. Agree 100%. Mark_Hef commented, loved this one when it came out. I mean, the man, the myth, the legend, Brad Dourif. And lads, let's be honest. Is there a more call me sometime worthy killer? Holy shit.
You ain't lying, brother. You ain't lying. I won't say it, but you know it's right.
Not to mention Danielle Harris' sneaky cameo. Anyway, sorry I've been away for a while and haven't been able to comment, but great to be in time for all the Halloween stuff you guys are bringing out. Love the pod. Keep it up with 2 thumbs up. Hell yeah, brother. Chris_2020 commented, underrated late 90s horror gem in my opinion. Agree 100%. Missy Hutchinson Wall commented, I love this movie. Rebecca Gayheart's hair deserves its own starring role. That's a great comment. And our last comment is from Jackson's mommy. This was so great back in the day with the hands up emoji. Hell yeah. All right, that's the last of the social media comments. Y'all got any fun facts you want to share? I don't have any tonight.
I've got 2. Jodie Lynn O'Keefe was originally offered the role of Sasha, but turned it down to take part in Halloween H2O. And Sarah Michelle Gellar accepted the role of Sasha, but had to back out due to scheduling conflicts with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but ended up being in Scream 2. And speaking of Scream 2, Joshua Jackson and Rebecca Gayheart both appeared in Scream 2, 1997.
That's right.
I got just a couple. The SUV driven in the beginning of the movie was originally supposed to be a Land Rover, but it was changed to the Ford Expedition, the largest SUV available at the time, because the filmmakers discovered they couldn't swing an axe inside of the Land Rover.
Okay, so this movie was made for a cool $14 million, and it grossed worldwide $72.5 million. So that makes sense why I ended up with a sequel. According to Wikipedia, the vast source that is Wikipedia, the ones that even colleges now will accept. This movie got mostly negative reviews, while with chief criticism being that the film was a blatant ripoff of Scream. Well, I say, fuck you. Why not copy greatness? That's all.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, people praise Friday the 13th and shit like that. I mean, it's a blatant ripoff too. So
they admit it's a blatant ripoff of Halloween. What's the big deal?
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Let's jump into our favorite kill, least favorite kill, and the rating. Anybody want to go first tonight, particularly, or I'll kick us off?
Go ahead.
Fuck it, we'll do it live. Favorite kill, kind of tough. I was torn between 2 of them, but I chose Parker, and I just wrote, man, Drano down the throat. That seems pretty fucking awful, to be honest. Least favorite, and I wrote, besides the dog, Professor Wexler off screen, just because it's Robert fucking Englund, man. I don't want him to die. I root for Freddy. But anywho, honestly, like I mentioned earlier, I'm a big fan of this movie. It's my second favorite 90s whodunit kind of movie that fits into that category. Scream is number 1, and number 3, I would say really close to it is The Faculty. Brian, another one of your picks. Really enjoyed that movie and liked that movie a lot.
Yep.
Only issue I have really with Urban Legend to me is I like me and Mike mentioned last week, like with Orphan, or not last week, but when we did Orphan First Kill, it's just a fun movie, and I think this is just a fun movie. This movie doesn't really lose me until after Rebecca Gayheart's character is killed and then she's still alive. I hate that. She should be dead. Like, there's no way she's getting shot, falling out of that high of a building, and then surviving to do all the shit she did. So that part is what really lost me. But like I said, I gave The Faculty an 8. I like this movie slightly more, so I'm gonna give it 8.25.
Well, okay.
I'll go ahead and go if no one else wants to.
All right.
Yeah, so for the kills, excuse me. Favorite kill is the Dean. Like I said, getting ran over by a Benz and tire spikes going through your back. That's brutal and kind of awesome. Really like the way that was done. Least favorite kill is the guy that was ran off the road by Michelle Manzini and Natalie. Like, just what a wild reason to set off this chain of events, but also, like, we didn't see anything. It was just a car wreck. Yeah, that's one of these favorite ones. But as far as the movie goes, like I said, it started out promising. It's an enjoyable movie, but if you're sitting there and like trying to nitpick it, you can easily do that because a lot of this movie is borrowed, we'll say borrowed, from other films of its time that came out a year, 2 years prior. If you're, sidetrack, Nico, to hear you say that you like this one so much and you like Scream and you like The Faculty, have you ever seen Idle Hands?
I have not.
Have you seen it, Brian?
I didn't watch it. It's on my list because you told me to put it on there, but I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, it's kind of on my list too because I know Dead Meat's done a kill count, but I just haven't watched it yet.
Like, that movie to me, like, I just kept going back to that movie in my mind when I'm watching this one because I'm thinking, like, this movie should be as fun and enjoyable to me as Idle Hands. I enjoy it a lot more. So I think you'd really like it, Nico. That's not to say that this movie is a bad movie at all. Yeah. It's just there's a lot to pick on when you're trying to do so. So would I watch it again? Sure. Would I seek it out? Probably not. So I gave it a 5.75.
Okay, I'll go. Yeah, so my favorite kill in this is actually Damon. I know that like nobody agrees with that, but I just really liked the way it looked. I thought it came off good. And I think it's kind of the most suspenseful, scary one that we get in the whole film, at least to me. So I like that kill. My least favorite kill is probably Natasha. Like, it's fine, but like, I mean, I don't know. It, like you said, Brian, the acting performance, no offense, kind of ruins it, brings it down a little bit. All right. So, like Nico said, man, to me, this movie's just fun. It's a good slasher to throw on if you're in the mood for just like that 90s slasher type movie. I think this is a better one to throw on than, I know I'm going to offend Brian here and maybe some other people, but I'd throw this on before I would throw on I Know What You Did Last Summer. I think I would. That's just me. And I probably would throw it on before Valentine, although I do like Valentine's. Like, I think it's a sneaky fun one. But I would throw this on before a lot of those, Scream ripoffs. Because I think the cast is good. I think it's a fun concept. They don't necessarily stick the landing, though. And I think that's the big thing that drags the movie down for me. I would be rave reviews, high marks if this movie stuck that landing. I just don't think it quite got there, but I still think it's a very enjoyable watch. Fun, nostalgic stuff. All of that being said, I gave this a 7.75.
Okay. So my favorite kill was the Dean car spike kill as well. It just kind of surprised me. Just the spikes part came out of nowhere. I thought, oh god, he's going to get run over, and this is going to be like slowest thing, like the Austin Powers situation with the steamroller when it's like takes forever. But it wasn't. It surprised me. And my least favorite kill, dog on the microwave. That dog didn't deserve that. No, fuck that. And so, in closing, YouTuber Ryan Hollinger, I think, really described this movie like to a T. It's. I really like this description. He calls it a time capsule of the '90s slashers, and I think that's a perfect description. And I usually love those. And again, whenever I was in ninth grade when this came out, I loved this movie for a while, but I talked about it earlier. It just kind of didn't hold up to me. I didn't hate this despite, how much I picked it apart. I gave Valentine a 6. I feel like that's a little better, but is it 0.25 better? I don't think so. And Nico won't let me go any further, so I'm going to round it up to a 6.
Okay. So I really thought that you were going to be right there with me, 5.75. I thought we were going to be right on there. But
I wanted to, but I couldn't do it. I wanted to be like 5.85, but Nico won't let me do that.
I got you.
You're like a dictator over here.
With that being said, our composite score for this one is a 6.9375. IMDb, with 67,000 votes, has it as a 5.6.
What the hell do they know? Quoting Mike on that one.
Yeah, they know. Yeah.
Hey, they don't know anything, so they agree with us. Say it every week.
It's fine.
Any final thoughts, guys? Brian, I love the pick. You stole it right from my list. I'm terribly pissed off at you for that. All right, well, let's shout out our blood donors, and Mike, you can announce your pick for next week. All right, just shout out our blood donors. Really appreciate y'all. Camper level reoccurring: Clayton J, Nina, Michelle Mirza, Andrew Ferguson, Carrie Adams, the Horror Movie Crew podcast, Alex Seligson, Eric Doolittle, and Sean Irwin. Our camp counselor reoccurring are Hunter Nelson, Dennis Kennedy, Edwin Hernandez Gunn, Joe Swinford, Jennifer Davis from the Too Close to Home podcast, Heather Smith, Kylie Denise, all the way from Australia, Adrian Aiello, Jake Hambrick, and Legion podcast, our new blood donor. Appreciate y'all. Final guide donors that we have movie reviews to do for, which we will get to, I promise. We're just really busy right now, is Christian Cunningham and Matt Sears. Really appreciate y'all. And Mike, go announce your pick for next week, brother.
Okay, so at one point I wanted to go the Fear Street direction, but I have an idea for that I'm going to pitch to you guys at a separate time, not on this show. So I held off on any of the Fear Street movies, which I've been asked about before. They're on Netflix, so that makes sense to me. Well, we're going to hold off on that, even though it would be a good spooky season pick. And I mentioned in the past doing an M. Night Shyamalan month, which I don't think now is a good idea because I like to spread some of his movies out more. So we'll get to them as we get to them. But I went back to the reason I wanted to pick an M. Night Shyamalan month because I'm actually picking the first horror movie that I ever actually remember seeing as it came out. So I saw Scream, but it was, a little bit later when I was a kid. And then again, I didn't watch another horror movie till Halloween 2007. So I picked the first horror movie I remember seeing when it was new. Horror being very loose. So I picked M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense. Whether you think this is a horror or not, it's very spooky vibes. It takes place during, the same time of year. It's cold. It's got that dark vibe, and I just really, really enjoy the movie. Eventually, I'm going to go back to picking a movie that I don't think is very good because I think those episodes are fun. But while we're in October, man, let's run it back and have a good film to talk about.
Man, I know I've said this in the past, and I really hate to admit this, but I haven't seen The Sixth Sense, and it's not that I didn't want to watch it. It's just I've already had the reveal spoiled to me. So, Mike, I'm going to do my best to go into the movie. I mean, I don't know anything that happens before the twist, but I know what's coming. But I'm going to do my best to...
I do hate that because that's like kind of the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like watching Saw and you already know the twist. It's not going to hit the same. So I'm going to do my best to go in with as best open eyes as I can. But it's October. We got a shit ton of content coming out this month, all of our listeners. We really appreciate y'all. I've already told the guys I got a listens goal I hope we hit just because I'm fired the fuck up for this month. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Y'all have a good one.
Ding, ding, ding. This is Brian from Don't Go Out There. I'm live from Pensacon. I'm sitting here with the one and only Tara Reid, urban legend, Sharknado, of course, American Pie. The list goes on and on. Miss Reid, there was something you wanted to tell our fans.
Don't go out to their podcast. This is Tara Reid, and I'm warning you.
Just want to remind everybody.